Hi folks, and welcome to this, the third episode of my series Kit Room, in which I talk about the equipment that I use for wildlife filming, photography and sound recording. And in this episode I'm going to be talking about that sound recording equipment. Now I would like to take this opportunity to thank everyone who has subscribed to the channel and for pressing the like button. I really do appreciate it. Thank you very much. Now, decades ago, I started with wildlife photography, moved on to video, and then sound recording. I still recognise that I have a great deal to learn when it comes to wildlife sound recording, even though I've been doing it now for 10 years. In my opinion, wildlife sound recording is perhaps the easiest to actually start off doing, but is by far the hardest to actually do well and to master. The very nature of sound makes it difficult, and then of course we live in a world of noise pollution and human activity, and then add in the wildlife and the landscape that we're trying to record these sounds in, and you have a recipe for immense struggle to do it well. It's the reason that the majority of wildlife films that you see either have wholly or part fake soundtracks, and it's also why a lot of wildlife films heavily use music. So if you're wishing to challenge yourself beyond belief, then start off wildlife sound recording. Now please feel free to comment on anything that I say in these videos. I really do appreciate a conversation. Now, the two aspects that I'm really interested in is single point source mono recording and then stereo ambient recording. So I'm not really into the technical aspects of sound recording such as binaural, ambisonics, infrasound, ultrasound, the list goes on. What I'm really trying to do is record the mono of an animal or activity, and then the stereo of the landscape that animal or activity is happening in. I'm wanting to give my sort of video viewer a greater sense of what's going on in that scene. So let's get to it. Now, all of the equipment that I'm talking about today I have bought with my own money, and I have no connections with any companies apart from buying their gear. So everything I say today is my honest opinion of having used this equipment for quite some time. Now, one of the first sound recorders I started to use was the Zoom H6. Now, this is a recorder I haven't used for many years now. The main downside for me was it was simply too noisy. When I'm wanting to record very quiet sounds, then the recording was just simply noise, and not very useful for me in that way. However, it is a flexible recorder. It does allow you to attach 4 XLR inputs that you can put 6.5mm jacks into as well, and also it allows you to attach separate microphone modules onto the top of it. So I've got the XY module, and I've also got a mid-side module. They do a shotgun version. I never bought one of those, so I can't speak to it, but that allows you to handhold record, or even sit it on a tripod and record in that way. Now, the handhold option is something that I don't do because the microphones are simply too close to my breath and the clothes that I'm wearing and so on. So I'm just introducing too many noises into the recording that I don't want to be there. And so what I would tend to do with this is to set it up, sit it in the environment and step back. So you can do that obviously with it's got the mount for the tripod, so you could set it down in the environment and then leave it a little bit. But as I say, the main issue was this was too noisy. Now I do gather they've brought out a 32-bit float version, the H6 Essential. I haven't tried one of those, so I can't speak to it. I don't know whether they've improved the preamps in it. I don't know whether that's the case, but certainly a flexible unit. Now, would I buy one of these again? No, because of what I'm about to say. So the unit I then moved on to was the Sound Devices Mixpre 6. Now I have both versions of this. There's the Mark 1 and Mark 2. These units are superb. For a wildlife sound recordist, amateur or professional, these are excellent. It has 4 XLR inputs, which you can also put 6.5mm jack into as well. And you can also record through USB-C or a mini jack. So it is a 6-channel recorder, but it gives you 8 channels of a sound file, because it also gives you a mix of the channels how you've set it up. So if you're wanting 3 microphones to be mixed together to give you 1 channel recording, then you can do that quite easily with this. And that's not something I tend to do. I tend to want to use the individual channel from the microphones that I'm using. So I don't tend to use that mix function very much. Now, the only couple of little gripes really, so these aren't issues or big issues, they're just like niggles. The first is that the placement of the SD card is in the back of the unit, and I've got a 64GB card in the moment, which would give me about 4 days probably of continuous recording. But once you've put the card in, then you have to put the battery sled over that, meaning that to get back to the card you've got to take the batteries off every time, which that gets on your nerves after a while. Now, the other little niggle is the on-off button is at the side here. It's very fiddly to be able to get to. I've got used to that, but you know, quite a few people mention that that's an annoyance to them. Now, these units, as I say, are, you know, to a professional grade. The preamps are extremely quiet, and so you're not introducing self-noise or that much self-noise into the recordings. It's a very low noise floor, and so even when I'm recording the quietest sounds, I'm still well above that noise floor, and it's not really affecting my recordings. And the 32-bit float is something that you can decide whether you want a 32-bit file, so you still can set it up to use to give you a 16 or 24-bit recording, and so it increase that flexibility like that. Now again, the design of it is more of a professional design, because most professional sound recordists would like to put their recorder into a bag, and the bag that I'm using, which isn't a professional sound recordist bag, it's just one that came attached to a backpack that I once bought, the Low Pro 650AW, but it allows me to attach it around my waist, and then I can drop the recorder in. I've got access to all of the controls, and I can see the level meters on the display, and so that tends to be either I use it in that way, or I'll sort of set it up in a drop rig or on a tripod in a hide, for example. And the battery sled that it comes with is a AA design. It's got 4 AA batteries. You can use alkaline or rechargeable. You just set it up in the unit as to which you want to use, and that, as I say, just clips on at the back there. Now, that isn't how I use this unit, because you only get about 3 hours recording time with the AA's. So the way I want to do it, because I'm wanting the recorder all day, is I've got a separate sled that I'm able to fit the Sony MPF style batteries on, and I've got two versions of this, but to be honest, I think they're kind of the same. And this one is labelled Sound Devices. The other one is Hawkswood, but I think they're basically the same company must be making them and just relabelling them. But that's just my guess. But I say this: the sled just mounts like that, and then the battery simply pushes in place, and then you can drop it into the bag. With one of these on, I can definitely record all day. So. That's the way I want to go. You can also power this through USB-C as well. So if you're wanting a bigger battery bank, then, or you know, you've got some sort of system in a building, for example, if you're indoors and you want to power it that way, you can. So what else to say? Yeah, so if you were asking me which recorder would I recommend to somebody who wants to learn wildlife sound recording, and you want to learn how to use the recorder, I would recommend the Mixpre 6 version 2, because it has that flexibility. You can select the 32-bit float, or you can select the 1624, which then allows you to manipulate your gain levels and monitor your levels and so on, and use the recorder in that way. The quality of it means that really, unless you are moving into full-on professional recording where you're wanting to mix several microphones, then this unit does it all. It's excellent. So I mean, the next Mixpre version is the Mixpre 10, and then there's the 633, which is that's full-on professional level for, you know, a film studio or that sort of thing recorder. So, but for field recording, one of these is superb. Now they say they do the Mixpre 3 version, so they've got the original and the 32-bit float in that. It has 3 XLR inputs, but there are some features that's missing that's in the Mixpre 6, so I would recommend the Mixpre 6. Okay, so I wanted a recorder that was lighter, smaller, and I could use in a drop rig that has a lower power consumption, and so I went out and bought the Zoom F3, and I love this unit. It is extremely simple to use. Unlike the Mixpre 6, this only records in 32-bit float file version, so there is no gain manipulation or anything of that nature. You simply switch it on, connect your microphone, and press record. And you know, for a drop rig, this little unit is superb. It's very quiet as well. It's not quite as quiet as the Mixpre 6, but it does have very good preamps and well within the sort of range that I want to use. So if you were asking me for a recorder where you really just didn't want to faff with it, you just wanted to, you know, press record and go, then I would recommend a Zoom F6, and they're only a couple of £100 as well, so quite relatively affordable. Now I use this unit on my camera rig because of the lightweight, and what it allows me to do as well is bring the microphones in and take the line out into my camera, so allowing me to effectively forget about the sound. As long as the microphone itself isn't being overwhelmed by the volume of sound hitting it, then this unit will record the quietest sound that microphone is capable of picking up to the loudest sound, all in one sort of easy thing. So certainly recommend one of these. Now, a standard piece of kit for the wildlife sound recordist is a parabolic dish. Now this essentially is the only mechanical amplifier we have at our disposal. With this 2-foot dish, I get about, I think it's 10 dB of mechanical gain. And when it first arrived, it came with the handle mechanism and then this foam unit that was fixed onto the front of the microphone, well, front of the dish. And essentially all you do is push the microphone in and then cable it through and so on. And so now, unfortunately, the microphones that I was using, I wasn't really getting the results that I was happy with. And so I did a little bit of sort of investigating, playing around, and eventually settled on a solution that I find is absolutely great. So I'll be showing you that now. So it's covered, the dish is covered with a fleece cover as wind protection, so this for heavy wind. And we can simply take that off, get that out of the way. And so that's the mechanism that I've manufactured, this bracket. And the microphone that I'm using is a Rode NT1. And this is it's known as a studio microphone, really. It's a very large capsule and very prone to picking up movement. So I do have to be extremely careful on how I'm handling this dish. And the microphone itself is quite heavy. The mechanism is a little bit, you know, for short little bits, quite easily manageable, but for long extended periods of holding it in a certain direction, because it is directional, as I'm going to describe in a minute. So you point it at the sound you're wanting to pick up. And with this setup, you know, if I'm an inch or two either side, then I do have a noticeable drop in amplitude in the sound recorder. So it's a really effective system as I've got it like this. So now I'll just describe to those who are not familiar what a parabolic dish is. It's simply just a parabolic shape. So it's not circular, it's a parabola. So the dish is like that. So any sound that comes directly to it hits it and bounces off, but it hits it so that the angle of incidence is equal to the angle of reflection, and so it bounces off. Another would come in and would do the same, so that's the I and then R, they're equal, and so that would bounce off, and the two would meet at a point. And it's the same for any sound that hits it at any point of the dish will be focused to the same focal point. And that's the reason for the parabola. If any sound is coming from a different direction, it will simply hit the dish and then bounce off in a completely different reflective angle, and so won't be focused at the focal point. Only sound coming straight at it will be focused to that point. So the microphone itself, as I say, is a condenser microphone. It's got a very large capsule, and that's another tip for using parabolic dishes. The sort of the larger capsule you can get, the better, really, because of the fact that the sound is being, you know, focused onto that area. And this microphone is also highly directional in itself, and so therefore that's adding to the effectiveness of the dish as well. And so all I've done is mounted it so that the sensing side of the microphone is pointing towards the dish, and then I put the foam cover on for wind protection as well. Now, because of the you know, the weight of all of that, and also the fact that I'm really needing to control any vibrations or anything and going to the dish, the way I've sort of done that is I've fixed a bracket to the bottom of the handle that then allows me to screw in this monopod, and so I'm able to then simply rest that on the floor, and that's holding the dish, and then I can just sort of really carefully hold it so that I'm not introducing any vibration, because these microphones are extremely susceptible to that. So that's how I get around that. And the recordings I get from this are excellent. And now the Telinga company have a modernized version of this. Instead of having this sort of foam unit, they now have more of a sort of a blimp design, similar to what I'm going to be showing you later, that you can then mount the microphone in. And the Sennheiser 8040 small microphones like that have a relatively largish capsule are very good in that kind of setup. There's also the Sheps. Now these dishes, they're not cheap at all. I mean, for what it is, you would question the price, but again, it's one of those situations where the manufacturing for a very small market, and so it's a high price. But as I say, I've bought that one many years ago, and it's still fully functional and no issues with it. So I should get many more years out of it. Right, so that's the parabolic dish. Another standard piece of kit for wildlife sound recording is the shotgun microphone. I have two options for this. The main one that I tend to use most of the time is the Sennheiser ME66 with the K6 power module. Now this is no longer in production. Sennheiser have redeveloped it. It's called the MKE600. That's the modern replacement for it. It can be powered by a single AA battery. I don't tend to do it that way. I use the phantom power from the sound recorder. Now this is a very lightweight microphone and very sensitive. Not very good for sort of the speaking voice, but very good for wildlife sounds and things like that. It's got a bit of a flat response, which is what we want, but as I say, it's not very lively for the speaking voice. So I've also got the Rode NTG2, and it's a much heavier microphone, but quite good for the speaking voice. Not as sensitive as the Sennheiser, so I tend not to use this as much as I do the Sennheiser. Now these microphones are very susceptible to handling noise, and so to combat that we use a Blimp. I've got two versions of the Blimp. Got the Rycote version here, and so the way these work is just a plastic cover. We can slide out the mount unit, so that you just clip the microphone into the mount. It goes into the Blimp, and then we can use it like this, or if it's a low wind noise, then you would simply use it like this. You can fix a boom pole to this, as you've probably often seen. But if there's high enough wind to warrant the deadcat, then we install a deadcat. So it's basically just a cover that the whole of the unit slides into, and tighten that up and everything, and then that gives us a protected microphone for high wind. If it's raining, then I do also have a cover that I can slip over this microphone unit, and that keeps the microphone down, because dry, because condenser microphones are very susceptible to moisture, and so you don't really want to let them get wet at all. And in fact, if you've had them out, it's a very good idea to put them into a bag with silica gel to soak up any moisture, as that they can permanently be damaged by moisture. So I also have the Rode version of the Blimp, which is much larger, and I tend not to use this as much because of the size, but the extra size does give a little bit more protection for wind as well, simply because there's more sort of area inside for that wind energy to dissipate. And it's exactly the same in design. You just have a holder that you slot the microphone in, and then that goes into the holder. And again, I've got the dead cat for that. Now, in order to keep the effectiveness of the dead cats up as much as possible, you have to keep them in good condition, so clean. And also, when you buy them, you quite often get a little brush just to make sure that all of the fibers are separated, because that's what's giving you the wind protection. It's the flexibility of those fibers to take out the energy of the wind that's hitting them. And so if it's all matted and clogged up, then you know you're really reducing the effectiveness of the dead cat. Now, if I'm using the microphone on the side of my camera, then I'm using the Saramonics windshield, which this is a windshield where the microphone simply pushes in like that, fixes to the side of my camera, and that gives the you know, a modest amount of wind protection. It's not as good as putting it in the Blimp, I've found, but you know, it's an acceptable solution. Now, we also have you know, these sort of foam wind protectors. Quite often I'll actually leave that on and put that into the Blimps as well, just to try and get as much of that wind noise down as possible. So that is the shotgun microphones. Now, lavalier microphones, often called clip or lapel microphones, are a very useful tool to the wildlife sound recordist, and I'm using a few different versions here that I'm going to go through. Now, the reason they're useful is because they're omnidirectional. We can use them to record the ambient sound, but also because they're small, we can secrete them into areas where another microphone perhaps would be seen, and also would disturb the wildlife. So say for example, I'm wanting to record very close to a bird's nest, then I'm able to use one of these lapel microphones to get right into the nest, and both the bird and the camera won't see it. And so I'll go through them now. So one of the main ones that I use is the Clippy EM272s. Now, I keep all of these microphones in small boxes like this, and the reason for that is they've got little trays in them, so I can keep either spare wind foams, wind bubbles, and I also will put in a bit of Velcro sort of tape to be able to secure the microphones to branches and things like that. So this is the microphone itself. So I've got the XLR version, because sometimes these microphones will come in 2.5 mini jack versions and other things like that. So, but I've got this one, so it's just the microphone, fixed cable, and to the microphone itself, which is about 10mm in diameter, this one. And you have to get the foam bubbles to fit the actual diameter of the microphone, because quite a lot of the other ones, they've only got a sort of 6mm hole. You just can't get these in, so you have to get them specific. And I've got two of these. I say they are very affordable. You can buy two of these for about £140, and they often come as a stereo matched pair. So I'll put all of the details of the equipment that I've talked about in this video in the description. But as I say, these are professional level microphones, often used by wildlife sound recordists in drop rigs, because of the fact that they're quite affordable. Means that if the microphone is damaged, either by something chewing them or rain or whatever it is, then you can replace them without too much bother. But very good microphones anyway. So that's the EMs. And then I've got the USI Pros, the Mikro USI Pros. Now these are very good microphones, not as sensitive as the EM2s, but they are slightly smaller. And so the again, it's the same form factor, XLR, bit of a cable, and then these are about a 6mm capsule, and they have redesigned it. The capsule used to be quite short, it's a longer one now, but I say very useful microphones. And but the only problem with these microphones is being able to get them, because the company seem to only manufacture a small batch at a time, and they sell out very quickly. And the original pair were damaged by water, and I wanted to replace them, and I can't remember how long it took me, but it was approaching a year, I think, but may have even been longer. Okay, so they're the Mikro USIs. Now the DPA 4060s, they're a very exceptional microphone, but very expensive. So one of these will set you back about £350, and but are a sort of a more of a professional level microphone in a sense. It's a lot smaller, so there's only a small capsule like that, about 4mm across, and these are used by film companies for secreting in your clothing for speech, but a very good microphone, because they do give us a flat response and so on. So unfortunately I probably won't be replacing these for quite some time because of that price. Okay, and the next microphone that I'm using is the Sennheiser MKE2. Now I'm using this microphone in particular with the Sennheiser EW100G3 radio mic, and the reason I've got these is not necessarily for recording myself, which I have used them for that, but in situations where it's difficult or impossible for me to trail out a cable to get to the microphone, then I'm able to put this microphone or one of the others in place, connect it to the transmitter, and then the receiver is on my camera, and a couple of 100 yards away, of whatever the distance I get, and so that's one of the ways that I'm using the radio mics. Now, slightly bigger than the Lavalier microphones, I've also got these EM1s, and they're about the same size as an actual XLR plug, and the microphone is just in the end there. Now these aren't as sensitive as any of the other lapel microphones, and the reason that's useful is because if I've got this close to my subject but I'm not wanting to record those quiet distance sounds that the other microphones will pick up, such as a dog barking in the distance, then this won't pick it up, and so therefore I'm not having to then take that out in post. And so having a less sensitive microphone does have its uses, and so that's I do have two of these, so I can use them for ambient recording. Now, one of the ways that I'm protecting the microphones when I'm doing my ambient recordings is in the sort of these larger wind systems. So I've got the Rycote baby ball, so I've got the dead cat for them, and so like the Blimps, you've got a small cage, and you just simply put the microphone cable through the bottom. Then I've got a piece of foam that I've cut a groove into, and so the cable slides into that, pushes into the hole, and then I just pull the microphone and it sits like that. And that is a very acceptable way of doing it. It's these microphones, they are condenser, and the same as the shotgun microphones and any of the condenser microphones are susceptible to picking up sort of handling noise, and so by putting them into a system like this I avoid that. Now, in a sort of a smaller way of doing that, I've got these little furries, so these can go over the individual microphone. Now, to buy them in different colours you can do that, but it is difficult to source them, or at least I have found that, and so I have made some. So like with this one, I just got some fur that was acoustically suitable. I just sort of tested it and that sort of thing, and then just made a couple of these. Now, the colour is akin to, say, a deer, fur of a deer. So I can put this right next to a carcass of a deer, either cable it out to the camera or use the radio mic, and then either I won't see this in the shot, or any of the sort of animals or birds coming to that that situation won't see this as well as something to be bothered about. So that's why I'm using that sort of thing. Now, the way I'm using the baby balls is in two ways. I can either fix them in situ with a distance apart, or I can use the Jecklin disc, which is what I'm going to talk about now. Now, to get ambience recordings, I'm using a Jecklin disc, and this is one I've manufactured myself. You can buy them, but they're very easy to construct if you have the components. So essentially all it is just a wooden circle that's 36 centimeters across, or 14 inches. And I mean, it don't have to be exact with these measurements, but that's sort of like a norm. And basically all it is, I say, is a wooden surface that I've then stuck acoustic foam to either side of it, and then I've manufactured these brackets that can hold the microphones. And the idea is that if these microphones are roughly about 17 centimeters apart, with this acoustic surface in between, then this would give us a stereo field similar to our ears, with our head in between, as it were. So as I say, all I've done is I've made this so it can be mounted on a tripod, and then all I do is I get the Rycote baby balls that I showed earlier, and then I simply just slide this on into place onto this bracket, and then I mount the other one on the other side and then cable it up, and then that gives me my stereo field for ambience recording. So in this last part of the video, I'm going to talk about some of the random accessories that we use. So I've got a couple of other different microphones. So I have the Jez Riley French hydrophones. I have used these a few times with dolphin and pilot whales and so on. These are a piezoelectric hydrophone, and also I have the impedance transformer, and so this can take it from low impedance to high impedance, and it also allows me to take it from the 6.5mm jack to the XLR. So they're the hydrophones that I use. And then I have a small on-camera stereo microphone, and essentially all this is for either recording perhaps a bit of my voice, but sometimes scratch audio. And so for those not aware what scratch audio is, it's simply where we record a low quality audio of the environment or event that we're interested in, so that we can then use that to remind ourselves in the post processing editing stage of what the sound was at the time. So then we can either build that sound up with Foley sounds or natural sounds to give an impression, but a higher quality impression of what that sound was at the time. So I just used that for scratch audio. So I've also got a MKH30, which is a figure of 8 polar pattern microphone. Now when you combine this with another microphone, you can use the two in conjunction in post-processing to create what we call mid-side. Now this is a specialist kind of technique, more in depth, and it's something that I do intend to do in the future, but it's not something that I've done much of up to this point. And then for recording my voice at the moment, I'm using the Shure SM7b. It's the only dynamic microphone that I have, and I do intend to take it out into the field to see what recordings I can get from it, to see if it benefits me in any way, with dynamic microphones being much less sensitive than condenser microphones. By placing a dynamic microphone close to the subject means that all of those noises that are surrounding it just not recorded, because the level's just so low. It's now I also, with the Shure SM7b, use the Thomann FET amp, and this is a 28 decibel booster. Basically the dynamic microphones require a lot more gain to drive them, and by turning up the gain on the recorder can quite often introduce a lot of self noise. By having one of these in between the microphone and the recorder, you get that 28 decibel boost at a very low noise floor, so you're not having to then turn the gain up on the recorder, meaning that you get a much cleaner recording. And so that's why I'm using one of those. Now you can get a variant of these FET amps to work with condenser microphones. So they have the 48 volt phantom pass through them, so you can still power the microphone, but it gives you that boost. Again, it's a lot lower noise floor than what the recorder might introduce, so you can get a cleaner signal to the preamp before you into the recorder, before you're sort of boosting that in the gain and so on. So moving on to cables. Now in one respect, cables are a necessary evil, in the sense that they're very heavy and bulky to deal with. But we can run hundreds of meters of cable out to a microphone and back to the recorder. Now that's something that we all do as sound recordists, because introducing yourself into the environment changes the nature of that environment. Birds will alter their calls, because they quite often will be using alarm calls, and that changes the very nature of that environment, giving them almost a false representation of that sort of the normal state of that environment. So being able to set microphones up in the area and then cable right the way out means that the animals can then settle into normal behavior, and you get a truer recording of what you're really wanting to get. And so yeah, cables are a necessary evil. Now the longest run I've got is a 50 meter run. I've got two of them, and that's always a good thing to do if you're using two microphones to give you that stereo signal. You always want to have the same cable length between the microphone and the recorder, because you do get signal loss in the cable, and so if you've got different cable lengths from one microphone to the other, then you're going to get different signals coming back. So you always better to have the same lengths. Now you can make these cables up yourself. It's quite it's quite easy to do. You can get these XLR male and female adapters online. They're readily available. Now I would recommend you always get gold plated XLR connectors, and the reason for that is, out in the open air, the sort of zinc or whatever metal other than gold will oxidize, and you can then introduce interference and so on into your recordings. So better to use gold plated. You're going to get a much better connection between the connectors. So moving on to the headphones. Now I've got three options. I've got the Sennheiser HD25s. These are a very good pair of headphones, very popular. Now one of the issues I do have with these headphones is I do find that I get noise coming up into the headphone sort of capsule from the cable, just rubbing on my clothing. And also these are a high impedance headphone, and that's the reason that I moved on to the next pair, is because my Zoom F3 wasn't able to drive these. And so I moved to the Beyerdynamics DT 770 30 ohm studio headphones. So these are a very high quality flat response pair of headphones, and have larger, sort of ear covers, so giving sort of better protection against the sounds surrounding you when you're using them. And yep, very happy with these. And the third is just a simple pair of in-ear cabled headphones. I use these just to be able to say whether I'm receiving the sound into the camera or the recorder. I can, if I'm setting up a drop rig, for example, I can just connect this in, check that I am actually getting clean audio coming to the recorder and so on from the microphones, and then off I'll go. It's just a simple lightweight pair for just doing that. Now, as I've mentioned many times, condenser microphones are prone to moisture. Now, that in the case of the NT1, I was actually setting these microphones up in the sort of very early morning when I was in the hide wanting to film eagles on a deer carcass, and the moisture was shutting the microphone down. And the solution that I found was to use these hot hand warmers. Basically all they are is a sachet of crystals that when you open the packet, oxygen gets to that sachet and it starts to generate heat, and they'll last for 8 hours or more. And so what I was doing was to take off the windshield, place the sachet next to the capsule, and then just push the windshield onto that, trapping the sachet next to the metal of the microphone. And that worked fantastically. I was able to then get clean audio, keep the microphone functional. And so since then I've actually started to put these into the blimps. So again, if I've just got the blimp in position, I'm not hand holding it, it's in position next to whatever I'm recording, then I'll drop one of these into the blimp housing, and it just warms up that air around the microphone and keeps it functional for the whole entire day. So certainly a good tip there. Now, For those who are not familiar with XLR, I just thought I'd just mention why we use these 3-pin connectors, these XLR type connectors, and why what XLR really is. So basically there is 3 cables within, 3 wires within the cable, and so we've got the 3 wires. The one is plus, then a negative, and then a ground. And so when we connect the microphone, we're effectively putting a transformer into the circuit at that end, and then when we connect the recorder, we're putting a transformer in at that end. And so when a extraneous signal, so whether it's coming from your mobile phone, or we're getting bombarded by radio signals of various frequencies all the time, and long wires will pick these signals up. It's basically acting as an aerial. And so what happens is when the signal hits the 2 wires, you end up with a positive signal on both wires. When that signal gets to the end of the transformer, because they're both positive, they are cancelled out. Each one cancels the other out, because in the normal signal you've got the positive signal on one wire, but then the negative of that signal on the other wire, and so they will go through the transformer and transfer the signal through the system. But if they're both positive, they cancel each other out. And so it doesn't matter how long the cable gets. If you're using the XLR system, then any signals it's picked up along the way will simply be cancelled out at the receiving end, the recorder. So that's why we use XLR. Well, thank you for watching, and I hope you've enjoyed the video. Please feel free to subscribe and like the video if you have done. Thank you very much, and bye for now.